The recycled air Meridian station always carried the taste of rust and disappointment, and Commander Vera Castellan had been breathing for 5 long days, waiting on the same metal bench in the arrivals terminal, her eyes fixed on the docking bays where ships came and went against the endless backdrop of stars. She clutched her worn travel bag, close though inside it there was little left of her past life. She had sold everything her commission, her apartment on Luna, even her mother's antique. Hover car all for the chance to begin again with the man who had promised her love, and a new start Captain Marcus Reeves of the freighter Horizon's promise. Each day, she replayed his last message on the fading screen of her datapad until the battery finally died as words etched into her mind like a cruel engraving. Meridian Station, Docking Bay 12. I will be waiting. And she believed him. She wanted to believe him because the alternative was unbearable possibility that after all she had, sacrifice, she had been deceived, left behind, abandoned in the cold expanse of the galaxy. Around her the terminal buzzed with the rhythm of transients and traders' alien languages, mingling with the clipped tones of station announcements, customs inspections, docking clearances, the hum of artificial gravity. Struggling at 85%, people passed Vera, without a second glance, except for the old maintenance worker who had spoken to her more than once. His name was Kowalski, his jumpsuit stained with hydraulic fluid, his face marked by the years of cosmic radiation. He carried a steaming cup of bitter liquid that pretended to be coffee and lowered himself beside her on the bench, the metal groaning under their combined weight. Still here, Commander, he said with the weary humor of someone who had seen too much 5 days. Now my supervisor is running bets about you, whether you are a drill or some kind of spy. Vera managed the faintest smile. No drill, she said, just waiting for someone who seems to have forgotten the appointment. Kowalski scratched his beard and shook his head. I checked again. No ship by that name, no Captain Reeves. Even stretched the records back 5 years. Nothing. His words carved deeper than the hunger in her stomach, deeper than the ache in her chest. She wanted to protest, to insist that Marcus Reeves was real, that his messages and video calls had been honest. But the truth weighed heavy. She had nothing left but scraps of hope, thin and fragile and fraying at the edges. On the 4th night her credits had run out, she bought a protein bar from a vending unit with the last chip. She owned the cheerful synthetic voice thanking her for her purchase, mocking her misery. She sat in silence, chewing the dry ration as alien traders passed, their large eyes glinting. One of the Zolani female paused to regard her, tilting her head with an odd grace. You radiate sadness, human. Female, the alien, said softly. The one you seek does not come. Vera wanted to shout that it was not true, but even her silence was answer enough. The Zolani added, the universe tests us with false paths to guide us to true destinations. Perhaps your journey has not yet revealed its purpose. And then she was gone, leaving Vera with words that sounded like comfort, but felt like hollow air. By the morning of the 5th day, Vera was ready to surrender. She stood at last, her back stiff from nights on the bench, her pride bleeding out with every hour she had waited. She told herself she would accept the relief. Fun ticket back to the colony, swallow the shame, and rebuild somehow. She lifted her bag and took a final look at Docking Bay 12, a portal where dreams should have arrived but never did. And then she felt a tug at her sleeve, small, insistent. She turned to see a little girl no more than 7 with wide brown eyes, hair tied into messy pigtails, and coveralls 3 sizes too big, boots clumsy on her small feet, grease smudged across her cheek like war paint. The child looked at her with unsettling honesty and asked, "Are you the lady who got left?" Vera froze, her throat tight. What the child repeated, "You're the one who has been sitting here since Tuesday. Now it is Saturday. You look like my goldfish did before it went to live in the big aquarium in the sky." The words pierced her armor, so sharp, so innocent. She almost laughed and almost cried all at once. "Yes, I suppose I'm she," whispered the girl, straightened proudly. Sophie Rock, she introduced herself. "My daddy fixes ships, and I am his best helper because I have small hands good for the spaces grown-ups cannot reach." She held up her little palms, bandaged and dirty, and studied Vera with a seriousness beyond her years. "You look like you need a family," she announced. Vera blinked her heart, catching "Did I?" Sophie nodded firmly. "Definitely, you have that look. Daddy gets it too when he forgets to eat while working late." Before Vera could protest, Sophie grabbed her hand with surprising strength. "Come on," she said. "Daddy makes the best grilled cheese." "Well, not really cheese, because real cheese costs 1,000,000 credits out here, but it is yellow and melts, so it counts right." And just like that, Vera found herself being pulled along past the terminals, past curious onlookers, past the life she thought she had lost, into something unexpected, unknown, and maybe, just maybe, into the beginning of something real. The small hand of Sophie Rock pulled Vera through the bustling arteries of Meridian Station. The air grew warmer as they left the polished Arrivals terminal behind and entered the industrial heart of the outpost corridors lined with exposed conduits and steel plating humming with the restless energy of generators. Overhead, the faint tang of ozone mixed with machine oil, the sound of distant welding echoed. Like thunder, Vera let herself be guided by the determined child, her mind reeling with confusion. And fatigued part of her wanted to resist, to tell the girl that she had no business following strangers, but something in those bright, unwavering eyes disarmed her. Sophie reminded her of the cadets she used to train, stubborn, brave, too young to know how fragile the galaxy could be. Sophie spoke constantly, her words spilling out like a waterfall. Daddy says I am the best helper in the whole sector. Daddy says one day I will fix bigger ships than him. Daddy says I will invent tools no one has ever seen. Daddy says that people like us always keep promises, because broken promises are heavier than broken engines, and they make your heart too heavy to fly. Vera listened without answering, drawn by the strange mixture of innocence and wisdom in the child's chatter. They reached a wide repair bay, its massive doors open to reveal the skeleton of a sleek transport vessel, its belly split wide, cables dangling like entrail, sparks raining from the depths of its wounded core, and their inside legs, sticking out from under the engine, was a man muttering creative curses that echoed across the metal floor. Sophie announced proudly, Daddy, I brought someone. The man slid out on a mechanic crawler, wiping his brow, his face weathered by years of labor, a scar running from brow to jaw, his coveralls stained with grease and chemicals, hair streaked with premature silver, his hands rough from endless work. He looked up at Vera's eyes, the same brown warmth as his daughter's, and froze. Sophie grinned. Only if they are customers or family. Right, Daddy? Well, she is going to be family. The man blinked, startled. Mortified. Sophie, please, you cannot just bring strangers. Vera opened her mouth to apologize, but laughter escaped instead, the first genuine laugh since she had arrived at Meridian Station. The man's embarrassment deepened, but there was kindness behind it. Sam Rock, he introduced finally, extending a grease-stained hand. Vera Castellan. She replied, her grip firm, despite the tremor in her chest. The girl clapped her hands. Daddy, she needs lunch, and you promised not cheese sandwiches. Sam sighed, but obeyed, leading them into the small quarters attached to bay. It was tidy, in stark contrast to the chaos of the workshop, walls decorated with Sophie's drawing, starships, alien creatures whole, galaxies sketched in bold crayon lines. Vera sat awkwardly at the narrow table, while Sam prepared the promised meal, synthesized protein compound melted into something resembling cheese. Sophie devoured hers with delight, and Vera found herself smiling at the taste. Simple, humble, but real conversation flowed slowly. At first, Sam asking careful questions, Vera answering with cautious fragments. She admitted she had been waiting for someone who never came. Sam did not press. Instead, he spoke of his work, of ships that needed fixing, of how he once learned an alien language overnight just to save a stranded family. Vera was struck by the quiet nobility in his words, by the way his daughter gazed at him with unwavering faith. As they ate, Sophie leaned close to Vera and whispered conspiratorially, Daddy needs someone to remind him to eat vegetables and to charge the right price for parts. Last week, he sold a fusion core replacement for 3 credits. Vera almost choked on her sandwich. Sam groaned. Sophie. After meal, Sam showed Vera the repair bay, vast and alive with the heartbeat of machinery. He explained how each ship told a story, through its damage, a collision scar from a pirate ambush, a burnt circuit from a reckless pilot, a misaligned coil from a desperate landing. Vera listened, mesmerized. She realized her own life felt the same, battered, scarred, but still capable of repair. Suddenly alarms blared, red lights flashing through the corridor. The station voice declared hull breach in Section C. All emergency crews respond. Sam transformed in an instant, grabbing his kit, barking for Sophie to stay with Vera. Before sprinting into danger, Sophie stood at the window, silent, her small shoulders tense. He always goes, she said softly. Mom was like that too. Vera placed a steady hand on her shoulder. That is what brave people do. They waited, hearts pounding, until Sam returned, singed and cut, but alive. Sophie launched into his arms. He held her tight, his eyes meeting Vera's, over her head gratitude and something unspoken passing between them. In that moment, Vera felt a shift deep inside, the ache of abandonment, fading, replaced by a fragile flicker of belonging. The days that followed unfolded differently. Vera returned to the bay, at first to keep Sophie company, then to lend her own skills. Her military training gave her an edge in diagnostics. Sam admitted she was a natural. She laughed more than she had in years. Sophie filled every silence with energy, drawing pictures of the 3 of them together, insisting loudly that Vera was already part of their family. At night, when Vera returned to her quarters, she lay awake, haunted not by memories of Marcus Reeves, But by the sound of Sophie's laughter and the warmth of Sam's eyes, she realized that the universe might have redirected her path, broken her heart, only to rebuild it into something stronger, and still the whispers of the station spread. Everyone knew the commander who had waited. Everyone knew the mechanic and his daughter. Everyone watched as their lives began to entwine, strangers smiling quietly at the sight of them together, like witnesses to a story the universe itself seemed to be writing life on Meridian Station, shifted quietly for Vera Castellan, the woman who had once worn the sharp uniform command, now found herself in the oil-stained world of Repair Base 7. At first, she told herself she was only there to watch Sophie while Sam worked, but soon she was holding tools, fetching components, running diagnostics, her hands learning the rhythm of machines instead of military consoles, and she discovered a strange peace in the hum of engines. Sam was patient, guiding her through repairs, explaining the quirks of alien technology he had mastered over the years, his voice calm, his movements precise. Sometimes his scarred hands brushed hers as he demonstrated a technique, and she felt sparks more real than any star outside the station. Sophie, meanwhile, filled every silence with her unstoppable energy, drawing Vera into game stories and small conspiracies. Daddy does not know how to braid hair, she would say proudly. So you haven't helped me, or Daddy forgot to pay for fuel again. You should do the numbers. Vera meals together became a ritual, Sam insisting on not cheese sandwiches, Sophie demanding ice cream. For every small victory, Vera laughing more than she thought possible. Strangers in the station began to nod when they saw her beside the mechanic and his daughter, as if acknowledging something inevitable. One evening, as Vera was reaching for a tool on a high shelf, Sam reached at the same moment. Their shoulders collided, apologies stumbled out, and suddenly they were kissing, unplanned, surprising, soft, and filled with the weight of days spent side by side. Sophie caught them, of course, her triumphant voice ringing through the bay. Finally, I was starting to think I would have to lock you two in the storage closet, Vera. And Sam broke apart, red faced. Sam groaned, Sophie, please. But the girl only grinned, telling Kowalski later, and winning her bet with childish delight. The bond deepened slowly, cautiously. Sam carried scars, not only on his face, but in his heart from losing his wife years ago. Vera carried wounds of betrayal from a man who never came, but together they found comfort in small routines, repairing ships, sharing meals, teaching Sophie, who declared more than once that Vera was already her new mom, even if the grown-ups were too slow to admit it. One day a crisis swept the station, a coolant leak threatened an entire sector. Sam rushed into danger. As always, Vera followed instinct and training, flaring back to life. She coordinated evacuation protocols, calmed panicked civilians, and worked beside Sam in the choking heat until the hazard was contained. When it was over, Sam looked at her with awe. You are more than just waiting, he said softly. You are still a commander, but maybe you are something more. Vera felt pride return, not from medals or ranks, but from the recognition in his eyes. Weeks passed into months. Vera moved her few belongings into a small apartment near the repair bay, but she spent most nights there anyway. Sophie insisted she belonged. Sam did not argue. He only smiled when Vera fixed the books, balanced the accounts, or reminded him the rest of three of them became a rhythm imperfect, but real laughter echoing to the bay louder than the engines themselves. And then one day the past returned. Horizons Promise docked at Bay 12, the ship that had haunted Vera's dreams. Marcus Reeves stepping out, tall, handsome, his practiced smile curving, but his eyes hollow. Sophie tugged Vera's sleeve, whispering, is that the jerk who left you? Vera did not deny it. Marcus tried to charm her, tried to explain excuses about contract and delays, but Vera felt nothing, no anger, no longing, just emptiness. Beside her, Sophie squared her tiny shoulders and declared, my daddy is worth 100 of you. He shows up when he says he makes the best, not cheese sandwiches in the galaxy. Marcus laughed with disdain, but Vera only smiled softly, taking Sophie's hand and walking away. Sam waiting in the doorway, watching her with quiet understanding. The station whispered again, this time not about the woman who had waited, but about the woman who had chosen, about the mechanic who had fixed more than ships, about the child who had gained a mother and perhaps saved two broken souls at night. They shared dinner like always, Sophie beaming, Daddy, she likes us. See, I told you. Sam muttered something about stubborn daughters, but Vera only laughed, warmth flooding her chest. She was no longer the woman abandoned at a spaceport. She was part of a family, messy, loud, imperfect, and stronger than any promise of adventure. The days on Meridian Station blurred into weeks, and the weeks grew into months. Vera Castellan no longer felt like an outsider watching ships come and go. She had become part of the heartbeat of Repair Base 7, part of the strange but steady rhythm that Sam and Sophie lived every single day. What began as cautious visits turned into shared meals. What began as awkward small talk turned into laughter and secrets whispered late into the quiet. Cycles when the station dimmed its lights to simulate night. Vera had once believed her life would be defined by orders, medals, and the path of command. She'd envisioned herself rising through the Earth Defense Force, climbing rank after rank, until her name was etched into history. But in the echo of engines and the grease-stained hands of a stubborn mechanic, she found something she had never known she wanted. She found the pulse of belonging. Sam watched her, at first with careful distance, his eyes wary but curious. He had buried a wife long ago and carried the scars of loss deep in the lines on his face. Yet every day Vera came back. Every day she sat at his table, helped Sophie with homework, wiped grease on her hands without complaint. And every day the walls around his heart thinned little by little. Sophie, of course, never doubted. She declared to anyone who would listen that Vera was her new mom and that Daddy was too slow to realize it. She drew pictures of the three of them, taped them. To the walls of the bay, announced proudly that the commander was now family, and when anyone laughed, she glared with the authority of a child who believed her word was law. The first real test of their bond came when a Rielian cargo ship docked with a fractured reactor. Core alarms screamed through the station. Panic rippled. Passengers scrambled for shelter. Sam was called to help contain the crisis, and without hesitation, Vera followed side by side. They entered the smoke-filled chamber, Sam barking instructions, Vera commanding evacuation routes, their movements seamless, a dance born not from practice, but from instinct. When the core finally stabilized on the danger pass, the two of them stood together, sweat-streaked and exhausted. Sam looked at her with an expression she had never seen before, pride mixed with something softer, something he was afraid to name. That night, Sophie crawled into Vera's lap, while Sam cooked another round of not cheese sandwiches. She whispered, "You saved Daddy too." And Vera felt tears burn her eyes, because maybe, just maybe, Sophie was right. From that day forward, the three of them were inseparable. Vera took shifts with the maintenance crews, her military pension padding the modest credits Sam earned. They ate together every night. They repaired ships side by side. Sophie chattered about school and alien languages, and how one day she would fix bigger engines than her father, and Vera would braid her hair patiently, listening to every wild dream slowly, cautiously. Love bloomed. Sam was not a man of grand gestures, but quiet consistencies. He remembered to bring Vera a steaming mug of bitter coffee when she worked late. He taught her to recognize the subtle hum of engines when something was wrong. He fixed a strap on her worn bag without being asked. Vera, in turn, reminded him to rest, to eat vegetables. As Sophie commanded to stop undercharging customers, she laughed at his terrible jokes, stayed awake beside him when the station shook with storms, and kissed him softly in the moments between chaos. One evening after Sophie had gone to sleep, Sam sat with Vera in the small living quarters, his hands fidgeting with a rag. He finally spoke, his voice low. "I never thought I would feel this again after losing Sophie's mother. I thought that part of me was buried forever." Vera reached across, taking his hand, steadying him. "You are not alone anymore," she whispered, and for the first time in years, Sam allowed himself to believe that the station community embraced him too. Kowalski, the gruff maintenance worker, treated Vera like a daughter. The Zolani traders offered cryptic blessings about paths, realigned the freight. Crews nodded respectfully when Sam walked by, knowing the man who had saved countless ships had now found someone to anchor him. And yet the galaxy was never still. One night, alarms cut through the common colony ship, drifting in deep space, its engines dead, its life support failing. 3,000 souls aboard, half of them children. The nearest rescue vessel, 8 days away, the colony had only 4 days of oxygen left. Panic threatened to swallow the station whole. Vera stepped into command without hesitation, her voice sharp, steady, as she organized pilots, mapped emergency routes, calculated oxygen consumption down to the minute. Sam beside her, his hands moving faster than thought, stripping vessels for parts, converting cargo haulers into makeshift passenger carriers. Sophie running between them, carrying tools, messages, hope in small, determined hands. "We cannot make it." Someone cried. "The math does not work." "Then we change the math." Vera snapped, her eyes blazing. Sam understood immediately. Together they stripped down racing pods built for speed, converting them to carry oxygen tanks, small ships that could reach the colony vessel 2 days earlier. And by precious time, for 52 hours they worked without rest. Sam shaking from exhaustion, Vera hoarse from shouting orders, Sophie falling asleep, still holding a welding torch. But when the fleet launched 43 vessels of mismatched origin, cobbled together by desperation and genius, the station watched in awe. They reached the colony ship in time. They ferried oxygen in waves until main fleet arrived, and every soul was saved. The story spread across the network, the image of Sam, Vera, and Sophie asleep in a heap on their couch, grease-stained and exhausted, but alive. The family that saved 3,000 lives. It went viral across the Colonies even reaching Earth where Marcus. Reeves saw it in some nameless bar the woman he had abandoned now, surrounded by love and heroism greater than he'd ever known. He muttered bitterly that he was supposed to marry her. The bartender laughed at him, and he never told the story again on Meridian Station. Life returned to its rhythm. But for Vera, Sam, and Sophie, everything had changed. People looked at them with reverence. Ships arrived with gifts of gratitude merchants offered. Discount strangers stopped to thank them, but Vera cared. Little for glory, what mattered was the warmth of dinner with her family, the laughter of Sophie, the quiet smile of Sam months later, in a small ceremony on the observation deck of the station. They were married, Kowski walking Vera down the aisle, grumbling about allergies. When his eyes grew at the Zolani traders, attending their voices chiming like music, Sophie, bouncing, as maid of honor her dress already smudged with grease, she shouted finally, when the vows were spoken and the station echoed. With laughter, Vera took Sam's hand, her heart steady. This was not the life she had planned, not the adventure she thought she wanted. It was better, real messy, filled with love and grilled sandwiches and stubborn daughters. And it was hers. Years passed. Sophie grew taller, sharper, more brilliant. She became the youngest certified repair technician in station history. She spoke alien languages, fixed impossible engines, and still called Vera Mom. Without hesitation, Sam grew older, silver streaking through his hair, but his eyes warmer than ever. Vera rose to chief of station operations, but still spent her lunches in the bay eating sandwiches with the family that had become her anchor. When Sophie eventually chose to leave, joining the Deep Space Engineering Corps, Vera and Sam stood proud and terrified, watching their daughter carry forward the lessons they had taught. Her family was not blood or promises broken, but the choice to stay, the choice to build together. And when the station once again filled with lost souls waiting for someone who would never come, Vera and Sam were there ready with sandwiches, with stories, with the proof that sometimes the wrong waiting place could lead you exactly where you were meant to be. The years on Meridian Station rolled forward, like stars drifting across the eternal night sky, time reshaping everything. And everyone, Sophie grew from a stubborn child with messy pigtails into a determined young woman. Her small hands that once held wrenches too big now wielded tools with the precision of a master technician. She spoke alien dialects with ease, negotiated with traders twice her size, and diagnosed engine problems by the faintest vibrations. Her laughter still filled the repair bay, but it carried new depth, the laughter of someone who knew her place in the universe and was unafraid to chase it. For Sam and Vera, watching her grow was both joy and sorrow. Every inch she gained, every certificate she earned was proof that she was destined to leave. They had raised her to reach beyond the station, to carve her own path among the stars, and though the thought of letting her go made their hearts heavy, they knew it was the truest measure of their love. The day Sophie received her acceptance into the Deep Space Engineering Corps, she burst into the quarters, clutching the datapad, eyes alight. "Daddy, Mom." I got in her voice, trembled with excitement. Sam dropped the wrench in his hand and pulled her into his arms, pride shining through the grease on his face. Vera embraced them, both tears stinging her eyes. She whispered, "We did good. The station prepared a farewell like no other for Sophie." Rock, the youngest certified technician in Meridian history, crews gathered pilots, offered gifts, engineers, shook her hand with respect. Kowski grumbled about losing his best helper, while secretly slipping her a toolkit. Vera braided her daughter's hair one last time, remembering the small child who had once declared stubbornly that she needed a family. Sophie hugged him tight at the docking bay, whispering, "Thank you for showing me what family means. It is not about blood, it is about who stays even." When leaving would be easier, watching her step on the transport was like feeling a piece of their own hearts board. That ship. Sam squeezed Vera's hand, whispering, "She will be all right." Vera nodded, though her throat was tight. "She will make the stars brighter." After Sophie left the apartment, felt too quiet, the bay too empty. Meals without her chatter seemed strange, but slowly they learned a new rhythm. Sam and Vera alone, yet together, sharing wine on the balcony, overlooking the stars, telling stories. Remembering the chaos of their early days, she teased him for his stubbornness. He teased her for still polishing tools with military precision. And every night they whispered the same question, no regrets. And every night the answer was the same, none, only gratitude for the strange path that had led them here. The galaxy, however, never stopped testing them. A decade after their marriage, an emergency broadcast lit up every screen across the sector. A massive colony ship, the New Horizon, adrift with catastrophic failure, 3,000 souls aboard. Life support dwindling, the nearest fleet days away. Chaos erupted once again. Vera stepped into command, her voice steady as she mapped impossible calculations. Sam dove into work, stripping ships, repurposing systems, inventing solutions. Sophie, though far away, sent encrypted blueprints across the network, guiding them with innovations she had developed with her core Vera, and Sam followed. Her instructions with realizing their daughter had surpassed even their greatest hopes. For days they labored without rest side by side, just as they had in the rescue years before. And when the mission succeeded, when every life was saved, the image that spread across the networks was not just of Sam and Vera, but of their daughter too, projected across systems as the family that defied despair together. Though scattered by distance, Marcus Reeves, a man who had once left Vera waiting, watched again from a shadowed corner of a distant colony bar. His reflection caught in a cracked glass. He saw what she had become, saw the love she had built, saw the family that had grown from broken promises, and realized with bitter clarity that some losses were blessings for those left behind. He said nothing to anyone, never daring to tell the truth of what he had thrown away back on Meridian Station. Sam and Vera grew older, their hair silver, their hands slower, but their bond stronger than steel. Every morning they still walked together through the station, greeting traders, mechanics, and travelers. Every afternoon, they still returned to Repair Base 7, though new generations of mechanics had taken over. They offered guidance, stories, and sometimes sandwiches, not cheese, but yellow enough to count. They made it their quiet mission to sit in the arrivals terminal, watching for those who looked abandoned, for those with hollow eyes, clutching data pads full of promises that would never arrive. They would offer a meal, a story, and sometimes a chance to begin again. And slowly over the years, the terminal became known not as a place of despair, but as the place where lost souls were found. One evening, Vera spotted a young man sitting exactly where she had once sat. His shoulders slumped, his face pale with heartbreak. She walked him, offering the bitter coffee Kowski had once given her. "You are waiting," she said gently, "but sometimes the one you are waiting for never comes." The young man looked up, startled, his voice cracking. "I was supposed to meet her here," she promised. Vera smiled softly. "I know, I waited once too, but waiting does not mean you're lost. It might mean the universe is redirecting you. Come, my husband makes sandwiches. They are not cheese, but they taste close enough." Sam chuckled when she returned with the young man, setting another plate on the table. "Sophie would be proud," he said. Vera nodded, wiping grease from her hands. She would say, "We collect broken people like we collect broken ships, and help them find a way to run again." Seasons cycled, the station orbited its great blue giant Kepler 779, and life continued. Sam gave Vera a small wooden ring on their 10th anniversary, carved by his own hands. She wore it beside her regulation band, telling him, "You fixed me." He blushed, muttering, "Pretty sure that was Sophie." But she only laughed, saying it was all of us together on the 20th anniversary of their meeting. The station gathered for a celebration, not of war or conquest, but of family. The observation deck filled with voices, human and alien alike, singing in harmony. Kowski, now old and frail, but smiling wide, the Zalani traders chiming blessings. Sophie sending a message across the stars, her voice trembling with love. "Happy anniversary, Mom. And Dad, you showed me the meaning of home." As the years stretched further, Vera and Sam sat more often in silence on their balcony, overlooking the stars. Their hands clasped their hearts steady. Sometimes they spoke of Sophie and her adventures, sometimes the people they had helped, sometimes the woman. Vera once was a woman who had waited in despair for a man who never came. Vera always smiled, saying, "I would wait 1,000 days if it meant finding this." Toward the end, when their hair was white and their steps slower, they still walked together through the station, greeting strangers with warmth. They still sat in the arrivals terminal, scanning the crowds for lost souls, offering sandwiches and stories, and hoped their love woven into the steel bones of Meridian Station itself. On their final night together, Sam whispered the words he had spoken countless times. "I love you." Vera replied, "You show up every day, and that is all I ever needed." They drifted into sleep, hand in hand, the hum of the station surrounding them like a lullaby. The universe vast and endless, but their corner of it bright with love. And somewhere among the stars, Sophie continued their legacy, building families out of strangers, collecting the broken, teaching others that waiting is never wasted if it leads you home. She told cadets and colonists alike about her mother, the commander, who waited 5 days at a spaceport, and her father, the mechanic, who fixed ships and hearts. And she always ended with the same words: "Love is not about who shows up when they promise. It is about who stays when leaving would be easier." Thus the story of waiting ended not with despair, but with belonging, with laughter, with grease-stained hands, and stubborn daughters, with sandwiches shared and broken people healed. And in the endless night of space, that simple truth burned brighter than any star.